If you're married or you're considering marriage, you need to hear this. Marriage is a lot like a grocery cart. Now, I'm not talking about just any grocery cart. I'm talking about that huge chunk of rubber out of the wheel that drives you nuts. It's just constant bump, 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 bump all the way through the grocery store. I hate that. But then my particular favorite is the one that has that pull to the left. You know, you're moving through and you're thinking, do I want to get another cart or do I want to keep this one? And so sometimes we say to ourselves, look, I just got to get a few items, so I'll just keep this. I can handle this. After all, it's only a slight pull. But then you begin to load it down. Let's say you put in a case of water, some soft drinks, the groceries, and now you can hardly move it. The slight pull now is accentuated and you're struggling, you're warring with this cart, and it's miserable. Marriage can be a lot like this. For example, you get married and you begin to load up your life with children, which are a blessing from God, but they're a lot of work. And then there's your job, and there are bills, and there are health issues, and all that's loaded into the cart of marriage. But then you have this bent, this pull of two people living for themselves, making the marriage almost unbearable. I want you to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that could possibly happen to my marriage? Just ask yourself that. I'm sure you can come up with a lot of answers, but have you ever considered this answer? In the New Testament book of 2 Corinthians chapter 5, we read this, and he, Jesus, died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. Imagine two people in a marriage living for themselves. There is nothing worse. You see, marriage is a vow of self-giving to the deepest degree, but everything within us rebels against this, for we are by nature selfish. We would rather be served than to serve. So we instinctively live for ourselves. So what's the remedy for this bent that we have living for ourselves? Well, let's look at the passage again. It says, and he, Jesus, died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. In that passage, we see the remedy. But he died. You see, the one thing designed to heal this bent toward living for ourselves is the self-giving love of Jesus Christ. What this means, and it's good news actually, is that your marriage can become more fulfilling when your life is set on the trajectory of living for Jesus. Notice I said trajectory or aim. I say that because we all will at times fail. But overall, our aim or our bent, the aim and the bent of our heart is now new, which means our deepest desire is to live for Jesus. So you might say, how are we to do that? Well, as we follow Jesus, we learn of him, and we learn that he came not to be served, but to serve. I assure you that your marriage doesn't have to remain like a loaded down grocery cart that's out of line. I know this because the first 2.5 years of my marriage, I continued to live for myself. And if it had not been for the mercy and the grace of Jesus, I would not be here today celebrating and enjoying 48 years of marriage. So I hope this helps you. If you feel like it's helped, I hope you'll leave me a like. Maybe leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what's going on in your life about this subject. Also, consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. I am Van, Unfiltered.